नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, संघं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, द्वितीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि धम्मं शरणं गच्छामि, तृतीयंपि संघं शरणं गच्छामि। पाणातिपाता वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि, अदिन्नदाना वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि कामे सुमिच्छाचारा वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि मुसावादा वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि सुरामेरयमज्जपमादठाणा वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि सब्बपापस्य अकरणं कुशलस्य उपसम्पदा सचित्तपरियोदपणम् एतं बुद्धान् शासनम् साधु साधु साधु।
बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि।
आवाज इंडिया टीवी प्रस्तुत धम्म चक्र प्रवर्तन दिन 2020 शुक्रवार दिनांक 23, शनिवार दिनांक 24 एवं रविवार दिनांक 25 अक्टूबर 2020 को प्रबुद्ध परिवार प्रबुद्ध भारत उद्घाटन समारोह। शुक्रवार दिनांक 23 अक्टूबर 2020 शाम 6:30 बजे। उद्घाटक डॉक्टर नितिन राउत, माननीय ऊर्जा मंत्री महाराष्ट्र। अध्यक्षता भदंत संघसेन, लेह लद्दाख। प्रमुख अतिथि डॉक्टर हर्षदीप कामले, IAS। सम्यक संवाद दिनांक 23, 24 और 25 अक्टूबर। धम्मचक्र प्रवर्तन से हमारी उन्नति कैसे हुई, जनरेशन नेक्स्ट के प्रगति की रणनीति कैसे होगी, प्रबुद्ध परिवार के निर्माण में महिलाओं की जिम्मेदारी, धम्मचक्र गतिमान करने में युवाओं की भूमिका, रोजगार स्वयं रोजगार क्षेत्र में कहां पहुंचे बुद्धिस्ट युवा, प्रबुद्ध भारत के निर्माण में लोकुत्तरा भिक्खु ट्रेनिंग सेंटर का महत्व, धम्मचक्र गतिमान करने में भिक्खु संघ की भूमिका, प्रॉब्लम ऑफ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन बेस्ड ऑन कास्ट एंड कलर, डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने बुद्ध धम्म का स्वीकार क्यों किया, प्रबुद्ध भारत के निर्माण में भिक्खु संघ तथा उपासकों का समन्वय, बुद्धिस्ट जीवन पद्धति से जीवन में क्या होता है लाभ। समापन समारोह रविवार दिनांक 25 अक्टूबर शाम 7 से 8 बजे। धम्मचक्र प्रवर्तन दिन समापन समारोह विशेष संवाद। सहभागी वक्तागण राजेंद्र पाल गौतम, समाज कल्याण मंत्री दिल्ली सरकार, भदंत विनय रखीता बैंगलोर, माननीय सुबचन राम कमिश्नर इनकम टैक्स। रात 8 बजे संगीतमय समारोह। सहभाग तमिलनाडु, लद्दाख, पंजाब, गुजरात, महाराष्ट्र के कलाकार। रात 9:30 पर धम्मचक्र प्रवर्तन दिन का अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महत्व। कनाडा, इंग्लैंड, अमेरिका, जापान, स्वीडन, ऑस्ट्रेलिया आदि देशों से मान्यवरों की सहभागिता। देखिए लाइव टेलीकास्ट ऑनलाइन gbcindia2020.in पर, facebook.com आवाज इंडिया टीवी चैनल, youtube.com आवाज इंडिया।
So I understand there is a theme for the talk tonight. Right effort. The technology for calm and insight or something.
Yes. So right effort, the true technology of calm and insight.
Uh-huh. Okay. I'll try and keep to the topic, but no guarantee. So at least kind of technically speaking, right effort is one of the factors of the Eightfold Path, as many of you know already. And formally speaking, it is there's 4 aspects to it, which can be summarized as 2, basically. It's to avoid and then to put away unskillful actions, and then to cultivate and maintain skillful actions. You get that right? The unskillful ones first, avoid and put them away and eliminate. And then the skillful ones are to be cultivated and maintained. But that's a very technical expression of it, because it helps to know what is skillful and unskillful, which has a variety of expressions. You can, in the formal teachings, of course, talk about skillfulness as, say, the precepts, or like this morning I mentioned the 3 areas of developing what's called merit or skillful behavior, and this is generosity, morality, and meditation. So depending upon your interest, I guess, and depending upon what area or level of Buddhist practice you're developing, the skillful and unskillful has different definitions. There's a little bit of a danger, I think, personally, that just having a formal list of what is unskillful, like the 5 precepts, and we refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, intoxication. So you can just look at this list, and then you can remember it, hopefully, and then you try and live it. But if you don't contemplate, you don't investigate what these really mean, it can just be a kind of a formula you recite, and maybe sometimes you kind of fool yourself, that I'm keeping these particular list of rules to follow or something. Personally, I don't like even to use the word rules, but in the Buddhist approach, personally, I think is somewhat different than the approach of other religions. The result, I would say, one of the results, but at least to my interpretation of having these rules, say in the Christian religion, is that and you're being watched by God, so you got to behave yourself. Is that people feel very guilty? So Big Brother's watching you. Well, and that's no, God's watching you. It's even worse. So you're always tiptoeing around in case you make a mistake. That's kind of a coercive morality. It's not the Buddhist approach. When you recite these you take on these precepts, you recite them. Panatipata veramani, adinadana veramani, sikapada samadhiyami. What it means literally is I undertake the training. Sikapada is a training. I voluntarily undertake the training to refrain from. God's not forcing you to do it. Buddha's not forcing you to do it. You voluntarily undertake this training to train yourself in these guidelines for, I define them as guidelines for skillful living. And at first, you need a little bit of faith, or you accept it as skillful living. But if you can apply them in your life, hopefully you begin to recognize that, it is a skillful way to live. Keeps your life free of remorse, free of regret, and free of a lot of complications. And when you have less things to worry about, it helps you to focus attention on the breathing, supports meditation practice. So there is a purpose for it, not just a matter of just keeping a bunch of rules and then you hope you go to heaven afterwards. You can hope. We hope for nibbana, don't we? Well, you can't get to nibbana just by following rules. Unfortunately, you have to meditate. But the rules are a basis for meditation. Helpful, supportive, very skillful support for meditation practice. And And in the Buddhist teaching of meditation, over the last few days, people have asked some questions, and I notice a kind of an underlying theme that many people mistake meditation for just concentration. Buddhist meditation has two aspects to it. You say calm meditation and insight meditation. Developing concentration exercise, developing mindfulness or awareness exercises. So while following the precepts, for example, is like I mentioned it, supporting calmness of mind because you have less disturbing thoughts, but it also is a support for insight meditation. Because if you bring awareness back to your actions and speech, which is morality, it takes quite a bit of self-knowledge, self-awareness to follow these standards, you say effectively or efficiently. You have to know, have I killed anybody today? You have to be very honest with yourself. And you have to be very clear in your mind, where you stand within the context of these guidelines for skillful living. Are you kind of sloppy in them? Are you quite refined in them? Are you really highly developed in them? One other thing I notice sometimes, in many occasions, I'm in a position of giving precepts to people. They ask for the precepts, and I do the recitation. And I notice sometimes that certain people who take the precepts, they miss out one or two, you see. Maybe they feel guilty too, or they realize they can't actually follow them all or something. Well, it's better to keep 3 than none, I guess. Skip out 2 of them or so. But it just when you notice that tendency, why am I a bit shy of, say, the in Europe it's mostly the 5th one. But intoxication, see, it's not in my context, but in some people's context, it's hard to get away from alcohol. Yeah? If all your friends meet up in the pub in the evening, and I'll just have a glass of water, please. You do stand out, especially after they've had 3 drinks and you're still standing, and they're not. One of our supporters of the monastery in New Zealand, he's a Burmese Buddhist, and he was very, very committed to keeping the precepts. But he was a lawyer, and part of the office ethos on a Friday night was to have a happy hour together. So he agreed to go along, but he just ordered a glass of water. See? And then after a while, the other people felt a little bit nervous with him around because, he was sober, and he could see what they got up to when they weren't so sober. So I think eventually they asked him, please don't come along. Maybe he wasn't happy enough. I don't know. Just drinking water. But this theme of right effort, it has this formal aspect to it. I mean, you can. It's a good foundation to know what the Buddhist says about these particular guidelines. About what is right effort, but there's also a right effort in the way of how we experience it in our spiritual practice. So one of the aspects of right effort, I find it useful to remind people, especially in Western countries, is the middle way. The middle way. Which it sounds easy, right? Middle way, but it's actually harder. What is exactly the middle way? You know what the extremes are, but what's the middle? You got to be quite alert, quite receptive to your own particular energy levels. Are you just relaxing, or are you being lazy? Yeah. And you say, if you aren't practicing very diligently, you say, well, I'm just discovering the middle way. Or investigating the middle way. I'm not lazy, I'm just investigating the middle way. Or something. But many people, my experience is mostly with people in Western countries. I was in Switzerland 17 years, and in New Zealand 6.5 years, and England 6 years. So a lot of people, the society, I notice, is very idealistic. You have these high ideals. And so, people, they read about Buddhism. I mean, I include me in this too, I read about Buddhism and, it sounded wonderful. I want to get that. I want to get peace of mind. I don't think I was too obsessed with enlightenment because I didn't know what it was. It was just too abstract. But peace of mind and, these wonderful things, wisdom and peace of mind, yes. But there was no opportunity to practice 50 years ago in Vancouver. The only option was to go to Asia. So I went to Sri Lanka first, then Thailand. And when I was especially in Thailand, I had a chance to practice on my own much more. And I realized about this kind of limitation of ideals. You have an image, you have this image, a concept of what peace of mind is or enlightenment is or something or other. And then you try to live up to it. You chase it, this concept. You try and live it as a concept. It was very easy to sit in my room in the university and read about peace of mind and wisdom and all this. And then I got to the forest in Thailand, and all I saw was just confusion and doubt and worry and fear. And where's all this wisdom that they talk about in the books? Where's that? And one time, finally, I went to stay with Ajahn Chah after a few years of my own practicing in North Thailand. I remember being with Ajahn Chah one time, and he just kind of casually said one day, he said, I can't give you any wisdom. All I can give you is patience. I said, wow, what a downer that is. I came for wisdom, the highest teachings, and all I can give us is patience. But it was a very, very profound answer, because real wisdom is self-knowledge. Nobody can give it to you. You only can get it from yourself. So even though he was a wise person, and sometimes you could say, well, that was really wise. Yeah. Then you go back to your hut, and then what did he say again? Because it wasn't your wisdom. You were borrowing it from him, you see. And then, of course, you don't really know it. It's just a memory. It's something you heard from Ajahn Chah say, and then it's not really yours, so you usually forget it. And you say, I'm sure he said something wise, but where am I in all this? Far from wise. But giving us patience, what he meant was that his approach to spiritual practice and monastic practice, in monastic form, was to provide the right conditions for us to practice. And he set up a big monastery, and he had quite a few branch monasteries, and he created the conditions for practicing the monastic rules properly. And then he had the evening and morning chanting and meditation instructions, etc., and created the environment where we could practice and learn for ourselves. And he was also he also created not just the comfortable environment in the monastery. Well, is it comfortable? I don't know. It's comfortable for me now after 45 years, but but he was a real master of challenging you too. Like when I arrived at Wat Papong, Wat Nanachat, where Ajahn Chah lived at Wat Papong, but Wat Nanachat International Monastery was the Western branch. The teaching was given in English, because I couldn't speak Thai well enough to understand Ajahn Chah's talks in Thai. But in those monasteries, in the early days anyway, Ajahn Chah was known to be a very, very kind of challenging, I don't know how I can say it politely, difficult teacher. But surprisingly, even when he was pushing people to their limits, there was no hint of being angry or negativity or nastiness. is all out of compassion. It's all out of metta and metta karuna, all for your benefit. So sometimes you would create a situation which was quite challenging, and you're really, on your edge. You think, oh, God, I can't take any more of this. And then he'd come over and smile at you and say, "How are you doing today?" And he could just laugh it off, and then he walks away, and how can he laugh? But at least it did change the whole. Give you at least the possibility for a new perspective on it. It was possible. He was able to go beyond the suffering. So he was an example. Oh, well, maybe I can do that too. I don't need to just wallow in my mood or indulge in my mood. There is a possibility to break through it. And sometimes just laughing at it. Nowadays I find, basically, when you begin to understand life, you can laugh about it or you can cry about it. And I prefer to laugh about it, personally. Crying is a bit, you get your robes all wet. And it is a little bit heavy-hearted. Plus, all your friends leave you too. There's a saying in English: when you laugh, the world laughs with you. When you cry alone. So you got to be. So we have a certain amount of choice. You can kind of bemoan your fate and cry about it, or you can try and lighten up and laugh at it. Especially when you see when I saw some of the tricks, the games my mind got up to, these self-preservation games. Sometimes I go, oh my goodness, it's been fooling me all this time. It's like a tragedy. But on the other hand, you can say, wow, that was a good joke. That was a clever trick. I caught up to that one. So it can be it's more like the theater of the absurd sometimes. And you see some of the mental games your mind gets up to. You say, oh my goodness, that's really clever. But the right effort, I would say, I mentioned about this, the middle way, moderation. This is what Ajahn Chah meant really about, he can't give us wisdom. Many of us said, I came halfway around the world to Thailand to get enlightened, and when I first went there, I just had 1 month, you see. They only give you a 1 month visa in those days, you see. So 1 month to get enlightened. Well, that's what I planned, first of all. You see, I just planned my trip. I went through India, and I'm going to stay in Thailand 1 month, get enlightened, and continue on to Malaysia, Singapore, Australia. But I already met a certain obstacle because, while there are many great meditation masters in Thailand, the thing is that people won't tell you that many great meditation masters, but hardly any of them speak English. So you got to stay 5 years and learn Thai. So that kind of slows you down a bit. If are you really serious to stay 5 years and learn Thai, or no? Yeah, so I had to change my plan, very shortly after getting there. In fact, it took me 3 weeks to find a meditation monastery. There's 20,000 monasteries in Thailand, but there's probably only a couple of hundred meditation monasteries. Would you believe? So all this Buddhist monasteries around, but a lot of them, most of them, they're either study monasteries, they're ritual monasteries, or doing ceremonies or whatever. So to find an appropriate meditation monastery is not so easy. And the meditation monasteries, most of them are up country, because it's helpful to have a quiet environment for meditation. So most of the meditation masters live in forest monasteries, off the beaten track. So a bit hard to find. So when we come, many of us are quite ambitious. I traveled halfway around the world, and I want to get enlightened quick. remember once there was these two Thai students who had ordained temporarily came to see Ajahn Chah in his monastery, and they were shopping around the different teachers. So they came to Ajahn Chah and they asked him, "What's the quickest and the fastest way and the easiest way to enlightenment?" And he said, "Don't try." And that was a very profound answer. You get it? Don't try. Just let go. Just be open to the present moment. It's your trying that gets in the way. As soon as you say, I want to get enlightened, then there's I, and there's enlightenment over there. You're chasing the carrot, you see. But if you just can settle in the present moment, just be present with breathing, with receiving the impressions that are happening in the present moment, that's awakening. You're awake in the present moment. You're alive then. Of course, it's a bit hard to sustain for most people. But it's that you can say there is this you can say ambition for this result, enlightenment or whatever. There is greed for it. They're all getting in the way of what's the way things really are in the present moment. You're pushing it away by trying to chase after it, you see. Or some people they put enlightenment way up there somewhere, you see. I want to get up to enlightenment, But enlightenment is just the present moment, right here and now. It's not up there or anywhere else. It's right here. But we have a concept of it. So the concept is time bound, space bound. Heaven's up there, hell's down here, right? But it's all in your mind. Heaven and hell are in your own mind. That was one of the fundamental teachings of the forest tradition. It's all in your own mind. You're looking outside for happiness. You're looking outside for a solution to your suffering. It's rather than look outside, look in here. That's where it is. That's where the source of it is. The root of it is in your own mind. But unfortunately, your eyes are looking outward, facing that way. And we should maybe, close your eyes and look in. Well, that's what you do when you meditate, isn't it? Another times, Ajahn Chah became much more well-known in central Thailand. So he had a number of people come from central Thailand, and they're much better educated than people in the Northeast. So quite a few students would come. So one time Ajahn Chah said, "Okay, close your books and read your mind." Can you do that? Can you read your mind? When I first heard that, I thought, what language is my mind speaking? I think my mind was speaking Thai. That's why I couldn't read it. It obviously, when I looked at the mind, it obviously wasn't speaking plain English. There's so much confusion and dullness and lack of clarity there. It was speaking English, obviously, not very clear English anyway. But this is that phrase is a very simple explanation of what we call insight meditation, is to observe your own state of mind. That's what one of the fundamental exercises of mindfulness is, observing your state of mind. So reading your own mind. And sometimes it can sound a bit abstract. If you look in the text, maybe, in the text of the Satipatthana Discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, to be aware of conditions of mind, and then there's certain lists of different states of mind to be aware of, and then you observe what's conditioning those states of mind, what are the arising elements, arising factors of it, and what are the passing away factors of this state of mind. But simply, it's just read your own mind. And so you can say right effort has to do with finding the middle way, and sometimes it may require that you're quite honest, say, with regard to your own level of energy or the way you're approaching the practice. I came across when I was one of my books was on the 5 hindrances, another kind of technical category in the Buddhist teachings. The 5 hindrances, people have heard of those? It's also one of the categories of investigation of the factors of awakening, or the development of mindfulness, development of awareness is the 5 hindrances. It is one of the more, advanced ones, if you like. Once you read your own mind, you may notice, there are some positive states of mind, and then there are so-called negative ones, which pull the mind down, the so-called hindrances. And one of them is to do with sleepiness and dullness. Quite a common one, at least in Thailand, in the hot weather of Thailand. At least here you got air conditioning, no excuses. But when I was preparing this book out of a series of talks, I had to kind of study in much more detail these various hindrances. So it was a very good opportunity to really reflect more deeply on them. And one of the things I came across was to do with, right energy, if you like. It's also right effort, but right energy. Like many people are driven by willpower. To keep it simple, there are 2 kinds of energy: willpower and life power. And most people, at least in the Western countries, are usually driven by willpower primarily. In the willpower, you have a certain idea what you want, and then your mind goes into gear and you just go for it. But it's very artificial, this willpower. Partly because, I don't want to get too technical, but the will or volition is a fundamental part of yourself, your sense of a self, or intention. The Buddha said intention, will was karma. So if I want something, then my will clicks into it and brings up the energy to go for it, to fulfill my desire or fulfill my goal or something. So it's artificial in the sense that it's feeding part of your ego, of yourself. And we all know that the self is not quite as substantial as we think it is, right? You notice that yet? Got to be careful what I say here in case somebody gets frightened. Whereas life power, it is natural. It's this power that we have. It's like the life force that gets you up in the morning. Or maybe you get up in the morning by willpower, do you? Your alarm rings and then, oh my gosh, work day. Oh gosh, do I want to get a paycheck today? Okay. But I mean, if you observe the type of energy that you come across in your life most of the time, you might be able to distinguish these 2. And unfortunately, willpower has, of course, many positive effects. But I'm talking about kind of long-term practice. And if we're relying only upon willpower, and eventually it'll run dry. It'll run out. It's artificial, so it's not being naturally nourished again and again. And especially, the more we practice meditation, the more you recognize kind of the falsity of self. You don't invest in it so much anymore, so you stop investing in the willpower then. But life power is just natural. If you look behind, it's a very common, it's a very, very homogeneous and harmonious type of energy. But willpower it's on and it's off. So I see this, practically speaking, on meditation retreats. At the beginning of meditation retreat, the first thing I do is look around. And, while people are sitting with their eyes closed, I'm looking around and checking out people who is sitting there the most rigidly. That's the person I have to watch most carefully. They're sitting there very, very rigid. So obviously they have very high expectations. They come there to get a result, and they're going to be disappointed. Life does not live up to our expectations, especially meditation retreats. I know this from firsthand experience because I went to Thailand to get enlightened in 1 month, and here is 45 years later, I'm still working on it. So, but at least I'm a little bit more clear what enlightenment is anyway. Might not be closer to it, but I'm a bit more clear about it, especially what it's not. But then if I'm watching these people, I see a certain pattern of behavior. The pattern usually is they sit there very rigidly for the first hour, and the second hour they, and then immediately up again, and then down, and then up and down, and up and down, and then, and if they manage to survive for 2 or 3 days, sometimes they're up and then they're on the floor. I guess it can't be sustained. It just can't be sustained, and it takes effort to exert will. You're burning up energy to exert this willpower. See, you're burning up energy by willing yourself to do something which is not natural, requires extra energy. But the people who are a bit more relaxed in their posture, I don't worry about them too much. It's obviously they're a bit more in tune with the natural energy and the natural process of meditation. So they'll be tuned into this and that life energy much better, and they'll be able to sit through the 10 days or something. But the ones who are primarily driven by willpower, then they've got to watch out for them. And just to say, relax, most of them can't. They're so driven, they don't even know what relaxation is. And sometimes I have to, encourage them to kind of take it easy and not be so compulsive about their practice. But it's hard for people to understand until they have the experience of, so we say, hitting the wall. Eventually the willpower just collapses, and if I see them in time, they don't run away, but but some do. And then point out to them, that you're just overdoing it. You're trying too hard. Just try and be a bit more relaxed. I have 17 years in Switzerland. Many of the Swiss people have a very driven society. They work long hours, very competitive. Does it sound familiar? So it has positive benefits, but it also has limitations, especially when it comes to spiritual practice, when we're trying to realize the way things really are. The way things really are is not an ideal. It's not a goal. It's not a particular concept in our mind, and not an ideal. You just have to open to what's happening in our body mind. We have this idea, oh yes, I'm young and strong and healthy, and after 3 days, not so young and healthy and strong. Unless you can tune in to your own energy level and live more in harmony with it, rather than trying to force yourself, forcing you against it, struggling against your body. So, and there is a meditation exercise I usually introduce to, the meditation on friendliness, metta bhavana. Those I don't know if it's a similar experience for yourself, but most of the times I teach retreats, there is a kind of a repeating pattern. The first day, people are very energetic, they're curious, and I came all this way, and yes, I'm going to meditate. And first day, everybody's very energetic. The second day, they're starting to slump a bit. And I talk about the third day blues. When your mind's still spinning and your knees are starting to ache, and then I bring in friendliness meditation. So if your knees are aching, rather than fight against it, try and be more friendly to them. Friendliness is also, when you relate to a friend, don't you feel more relaxed with your friend? You feel warm and comfortable and friendly, and you relax more. And then for some people who have either been really struggling and really suffering, suddenly this really makes sense. Yes, just be more at peace with the way things are. So then so I can survive the next 7 days. You're fighting against your body and fighting against your mind. It'll be a long 7 days, and you won't get a very beneficial result either. Just get a headache and a bad experience. Then you take some other religion. Then I want an easier one. I think I'll take up the psychosomatic, psychosomatic ping pong or something. But the finding the middle way is not as easy as it sounds, and basically it's learning from our mistakes. You need to be humble enough to learn from your mistakes. One of Ajahn Chah's teachings was that somebody asked him, how do you teach? There's all these Westerners coming here. They don't speak their language. How do you teach them? He just said, when they go left, I say, they go too far left, I say, go a bit more right. They go too far right, he said, go a bit more left. Just giving them a little helpful advice, you see. And when you're going a little bit too far right, you don't notice it yourself unless you have quite a bit of self-awareness. You don't see it yourself. So having somebody give you some suggestions or pointing things out can be helpful then. But then you've got to make the effort to change your direction too, which requires quite a bit of humility and acknowledge that I don't know really. So the middle way, when it comes with the right effort, when it comes to our practice, it takes on a different dimension. Maybe it's finding the middle way. It's included in that, of course, is acknowledging our limitations, being open to changing our approach, and being open to being flexible. I think being more flexible is much more valuable. I think it should be listed as one of the spiritual powers, being flexible and adaptable. And when we're exploring meditation practice, that's what it's about, trying to be aware of the way things really are. If we already knew the way things really are, we wouldn't need to meditate, because we don't quite know yet. Then we come to take up some spiritual practice too. So it implies that we have an attitude of being a student. We want to learn. We want to learn what's going on. And to be able to do that, you need to be somewhat flexible, adaptable, because many of the lessons that come our way, we don't expect them. Some of the so-called insights, for example, people talk about, they sort of imagine an insight is this kind of, I don't know how you imagine it, but some people think, with some insights, kind of the heavenly bells ring and the mandava flowers flow down from heaven or something, But many times it's just a breakthrough of suffering. It's like you bang your head against the wall and then you realize, oh, the door's open. You've been going the wrong way. You had the wrong attitude. You had the wrong perspective. So you just got to stop and then look around a bit more and then adjust your position, adjust your approach. Then, I mean, the Dhamma, the truth is already here all the time. Yeah, we just don't see it yet. Huh? You see it? It's right here, right now. The only reality is the present moment, right here and now. What did you say yesterday? What are you doing tomorrow? But the finding the right effort is really a matter of experience. You can read the book about it, but and you can say each one of us has our own, you can say right energy level, right energy. And it's a matter of kind of fine-tuning it. You know, for some people who are, say, a little bit more, you know, a little bit more relaxed, maybe they need to kind of recharge their energy or something. Sometimes people have been using the wrong energy, like this willpower, for a long, long time. They have to kind of retune their whole life and approach it from a different direction. And there was one, just before I traveled in Southeast Asia this time, somebody came to the monastery and she asked me about her practice, and she said she just came from a busy life situation in Sydney, working in an office, and she said, I come out to the quiet forest and I just tired all the time, just tired. Fall asleep in the morning meditation, evening meditation. And I said, well, maybe you're stressed out. Maybe you have to relax. Maybe you have to take a rest. And I said, what? You know, came here to meditate. Yes, you would like, you know, your will wants to meditate, but your meditation is just sleep right now, right? So I mean, you know, sometimes quite a few people have been empowered or energized by sensory stimulation. You know, and then especially when you go to a very quiet place like a forest monastery, there isn't that stimulation anymore, and your mind can't get energized then. You know, maybe you have to, like, she actually said it herself. I mean, I have to kind of reboot my energy. Yeah, I have to kind of approach energy in a different way now. Been driven by ambition, driven by caffeine and adrenaline, and now you come to a quiet monastery, and sorry, we don't give you any adrenaline. It's pretty boring and dull here, actually. The most exciting things is the cockatoos in the morning. A daily, you know, a very simple and kind of monotonous daily routine, and very simple things. The most exciting thing is mealtime. But then it allows people then to kind of reevaluate. You know, sometimes going to a situation like that, removing yourself from your familiar environment, you know, can give you the possibility to give some perspective. You know, what are you really doing with your life? You know, you just caught up in the rat race or something, you know, or you feel your life is really, you know, having some value to it. It has some purpose. It's satisfying. Though, but you know, some of these challenges are not necessarily what we expect. And you go to a quiet, people come to the quiet monastery and think, oh yes, I'll leave all my problems behind and come to a quiet monastery and I'll be so peaceful. And but they forget that they bring their mind with them, which is the biggest problem. It's not the problems, it's not challenges, not difficulties in life. It's how you relate to the difficulties. Yeah, that's the biggest problem. You know, sometimes life can be challenging, and if you try to avoid it and resist it, then you know it's going to be twice as bad. You know, you have that challenge to deal with, and then you have your resistance to the challenge to deal with. So you got two problems now. But you know, maybe it's helpful sometimes to be in a supportive environment where you can kind of reevaluate your situation, you know? And then you can maybe go back to the ordinary life situation, but you have a slightly different perspective or approach to it then. You know, just taking that, I would say, taking that theme of, you know, the middle way back to your life situation. Just use it as a kind of reflection, the middle way, moderation. And before I went traveling in Europe, I read something about Buddhism a little bit, you know, the middle way, these basic things. And then when I was traveling in Greece, I wanted to go to more kind of religious places. And one of the religious places in the history of Western civilization is called the Delphic Oracle. It's getting spooky. There's nobody there now. It's just a museum. But apparently, you know, some of the some of the famous Greek people of Greek history went to consult the oracle in Delphi, you see. So I don't know, I just kind of a bit romantic about it. I'll go there and, you know, tune into the vibrations here and see if I get, see if somebody would tell me if I should be a monk or not, or I don't know. I didn't have any questions at all, but I just thought I'd go there anyway, because I like to go to, you know, these kind of quieter places out in the country. And but when I went there, one of the things there's no books there or anything. You had to supposed to consult this oracle, so-called. You know? But the one thing that was written there in this temple, it was the middle way, moderation. It was moderation. Medan agang, I think, in Greek. Yeah. That was moderation. That was the wisest words this oracle could give. Moderation. That sounds familiar. Moderation in all things, you see. So the Buddha put it in the middle way, the middle path, because he was talking about a path of spiritual practice, not just being moderate in your life, but a path which is the middle way. You can say a balanced one, if you like, a balanced path too. You know, one of the categories the Buddha refers to sometimes is called both the faculties and the powers. These are 5 very important mental qualities. Yeah, they are called faculties initially, but then they can be developed to the level of powers, spiritual powers. So this is concentration, faith, mindfulness, wisdom, and energy. These 5. And, you know, we all have them. We all have these qualities. I don't know about faith, maybe. I'm a bit weak on faith myself, but it could be, faith can also be, I prefer the word, I translate it when I'm in Switzerland to the word in German, which means trust. You have trust in the teaching. You know, my Christian upbringing gives me a little bit of allergy to the word faith, you see, because there was always association of blind faith. You just have to believe. Don't think, just believe. You know? So I got a bit upset with that. But trust I can handle. And when I read about the Buddha's teachings, to me, logically, I could trust them. Made perfect sense. Very, very logical. Made perfect sense. I didn't really know. I didn't have the wisdom to know that it actually works, but I had the trust that it seems logical. It could work. You see. But these particular powers, they have to be balanced. So this might be a surprise to you, but you know what the balance is. This faith or trust needs to be balanced with wisdom, or you can say wisdom, or you can put it understanding or knowledge. If you just have trust, it can become just blind trust. You know, and this can happen, you know, in regard to a teacher, for example. Somebody can be very, very, you know, charismatic personality. They can be a very good speaker, and you can get maybe taken in by their articulation or their way of presenting things or their energy or something, or enthusiasm. You know, there's some people who say, "This is the way it is." When I hear "this is the way it is," I'm a bit suspicious. I'm a bit suspicious, I must say. I don't have faith. This is the only way. Oh, really? I'm out of here, thanks. Or my way is the best. I'm quickly gone. But if they say, "Oh, here is one suggestion," or "Here is something I can share with you or offer you," or, you know, "My understanding of the Buddhist teachings is something like this," then, well, I can listen to that anyway. But recognizing that this trust or faith should be balanced with wisdom, with knowledge, with understanding. Say, okay, you receive what they say, and now kind of check it out. You can get kind of cross-referencing now. So my way of cross-referencing, I am a little bit of a studious person. I like to study, so I got glasses. Ruined my eyes early on. So I cross-reference with the Pali Canon. the scriptures, the Pali Canon, which is the Theravada scripture in the Pali language. It's it's a lot of reading for those who know. There's quite a few books like that, big thick books like this, but we have a lot of time on our hands anyway. So, and then surprisingly, when I went to stay with Ajahn Chah, he was known as a forest meditation master, and there is sort of a you could say like a belief that you either follow the study tradition or you study the meditation tradition. Even from the time of the Buddha, there was mention of this Ganta Dura and Vipassana Dura. So, and for most monks, they can't do both. There are a few who have done kind of covered both of these areas of practice, but the majority of them make a choice early on. And most of them choose the study path, at least in Thailand, because in Thailand, they acknowledge your level of study, see? How much study you get, Pali language and proficiency in Dhamma, and then you get a certain degree, and then you get a promotion, but it's hard to measure meditation expertise, you see, only by more or less hearsay, or by people who have faith in what this teacher says or teaches or guides. But there's no exam for meditation teachers, you see. So Ajahn Chah was a forest meditation master. So I thought, oh, well, he's not very well educated, see, because he comes from the countryside. He's a son of a rice farmer, and he's a meditation teacher, and I can respect his meditation practice. But when I listened to his teachings, and then when I could learn Thai, when I learned Thai anyway, I listened to his teachings, and I began to recognize he made many references to the Pali Canon. Many of the similes he used and some of the references and the stories he talked about, they were referred to the Pali Canon. And because I read the Pali Canon, I could, there is some, you can say, some affirmation. Ajahn Chah was not just making it up to sound good, but he was following on in the footsteps of the Buddha. And then he could, from that basis of understanding the basic Buddhist teachings anyway, and then of course he added his own experience to it, and he could elaborate it. He was quite a very gifted speaker, or could explain things very, very simply, so he could elaborate. I find personally one of the kind of challenges of the Pali Canon is that many times it's a bit abstract. There's partly because they're talking about concepts that some of us maybe in this modern day and age don't know about. The book I'm writing next, still working on it, but I have to study a bit more particular Pali terms. And I got a little bit surprised because, according to my, profound knowledge, they've been translated wrong. Okay, there's views and opinions about it, but some of them just don't come across. And I don't think I don't blame anybody, but mainly the people who are translating the scriptures, they are scholars. They're dependent upon literacy. They have to give a literal translation, you see. And many of them are not meditators. They haven't been practicing. So they can give the literal meaning, but when it comes to the practice, you have a different approach to it. It has a different meaning for you then when you're practicing. So fortunately, Ajahn Chah could add that. Some of his teachings were really coming from the practical point of view, the everyday living of the teachings, and through his meditation practice. So they really, well, at least for me, they had more meaning. Maybe some of the scholar monks who came to stay with him were a bit confused, because he used words in a different way, but but if being able to cross-reference, that becomes a helpful way to arrive at a clear understanding. Just only thinking about things or logically understanding them is only one very small way of understanding. But when you can cross-reference it, we can say In the kind of formal explanations, it talk about 3 kinds of wisdom. Well, I'm just translating the word panya as wisdom, panya. 3 kinds of understanding, if you like. The first one is what you hear from other people. You hear teachings, and nowadays we read books and have listened to CDs or whatever. You still use CDs, DVDs or something like that. I'm a little bit behind times here. Or MP3s, or what is it nowadays? Huh? Or is that too old? I'm showing my age. I was going to say, I used to say, you listen to a tape. But I've learned that one already. There's no tapes anymore. I had to throw all my tapes away because I couldn't get tape recorder anymore. Can't even buy a tape recorder anymore. But there's some kind of, you get some level of understanding from what you hear and read, but it's not your experience yet. And then there is thinking about things, contemplating, thinking more from the thinking level. Thinking, is that what's this really mean? What's this concept? You read a concept in the book, and what does this mean? But the highest kind of wisdom, pointed out, is the wisdom coming from meditation practice, which is direct experience. For one example, Ajahn Chah gave was, he said, well, you can look in the dictionary about the word anger, right? You can read what anger is, right? But when you turn your attention to your own anger, what's your experience? It's not quite so abstract, is it? You look at your own anger and ouch. And there's your experience of your own anger as a physical sensation, as an emotion, maybe as a state of mind. It's spinning through your mind, trying to figure it out, trying to rationalize it, trying to blame somebody for it. Quite different than just looking in the dictionary and say, oh yes, anger. Very interesting, anger, yes. Nice concept, yes, just leave it there. And then blowing up at somebody the next minute because they interrupted your reading about anger, you see. But going into the direct experience, okay, especially for the more kind of a little bit more, you say, kind of messy emotions, or the more volatile ones, or the more difficult ones, challenging ones. This is where it's helpful to have a good basis of calm meditation already established. That's the highest level of wisdom comes from meditation practice, which means calm and insight. It's helpful to establish some degree of calm, especially with, say, I mentioned anger. You can say, oh yes, I'll just look at my anger today and figure it all out. Well, you probably won't. You can't do it. For most people, something like anger is too much energy. It's too powerful, overwhelming, or they start to get caught in all their stories about it. But if you establish some degree of calmness in your mind by focusing on a meditation object, your mind is more calm. You can receive a little bit more challenging, difficult situations without reacting to them, without reacting to the anger. You get to the point where even sometimes these emotions can be so quietened down that you forget you're angry. That's a little bit of a danger because you think it's gone. You just blissed out on it, blissed it out, blissed it out of existence with your concentration, but it's only gone to sleep temporarily. But if we recognize what the middle way is of practice, this requires a certain, going into it and finding out for yourself, what is energy? Energy in these powers is balanced with concentration. To go from the other side and we try and develop calm meditation, concentrating on the breathing, for example, your energy of mind, your distractedness of mind, which keeps you awake many times, is quietened down. The mind comes to one point or closer to one point. Less distraction, less excitement, less disturbance. And if you haven't developed an appropriate level or kind of energy, then the mind just shuts down. And you get very dull and sleepy and very peaceful. You're very peaceful sitting there, nodding off, but not very clear. You have to learn also to bring in energy, to re-energize the mind in a skillful way, without caffeine and without stimulation. And so this, faith or trust, without a good basis of understanding or knowledge, can become just blind belief. You just believe whatever sounds good or whatever you want to believe or whatever, and it can be in the kind of culture of Buddhism. I lived in Thailand for many years, and there's many different interpretations. And I was telling somebody today how in Thai Buddhism, many times they even get mixed up with other, say, religions. When I was in Switzerland, the monastery there, some Thai people came and they said, "Oh, where's your spirit house?" Because many houses have a little spirit house. You got to light the incense in the morning to pray to the spirits who are guarding your house, I guess, you see. So he said, "Where's your spirit house?" I said, "Spirit house. This is a Buddhist monastery. We got the best spirit." We get the true spirit, whole Buddha. We don't mess around with these kid stuff. We got, and they were so surprised that you have a Buddhist temple without a spirit house in it. And somebody else came along and they wanted to offer us a Buddha image. So I said, "Okay, you can bring it to the monastery." Yes. So they brought this image, and it was Brahma. The Brahma image, the four face. They thought it was Buddha. They didn't know the difference. Okay, the Thais are very tolerant and eclectic and flexible, but sometimes many other folk beliefs and cultural beliefs get drawn into it as well. And if you don't have a good source, I could say a good source of knowledge, wisdom of knowledge, then you accept that's part of Buddhism, really. That's the Buddhist teachings. And in the teachings about a lot of there's animism also in the countryside, especially the countryside of Thailand, and so they believe in all these ghosts and spirits and all this kind of stuff. And you say, well, the Buddha criticized all this stuff. He rose above it and said, you don't need all that stuff. It all comes from your own mind. Just work on your own mind, and you don't need all these other props and superstitious stuff. You see. But it's hard to. You have to have some other more stable refuge before you can let those go. So having the right balance of these particular qualities, and we have the middle way, the balance, and then right effort, and becomes right energy. Then put forth the energy, and this right energy is more looking at the long-term perspective. One of the qualities which is often emphasized in the forest tradition is patience. Just like Ajahn Chah mentioned, you can't give wisdom but patience. Is it a great seller here? Just be patient. Just be patient. That doesn't sell so well, is it? I'd like wisdom, enlightenment. Yeah, right. I'll take that. Patience. No thanks. That takes too long. But there's more to patience. I see it usually when I give retreats. I usually try and remind people to look kind of at the long-term perspective, to get the bigger picture. People are so focused on, I want results right now. I want to get it right now. But that's that kind of greed, that kind of ambition is just blocking your practice. I want it. That's greed, right? And greed is not one of the skillful states of mind. But patience, well, I just I have the confidence that it works. I can just be patient and allow things to unfold in a more natural way. And I mean, in the meantime, you're also developing these particular qualities of concentration and clarity and energy, these spiritual qualities as well. So it's not just kind of, sitting back on your seat and say, okay, I'll wait for enlightenment to come my way. And depending upon the individual, when the Buddha gave his teachings, it was very contextual. The Buddha, they say the Buddha could read people's minds. He could understand their temperament. So he would adjust the teaching to suit that temperament, you see. So for some people, he emphasized a lot of energy. When you realize that that person was, either fundamentally lazy, or they didn't really have the right attitude to life. They took it too casually, didn't take it seriously enough. The Buddha emphasized energy. And sometimes some of his exhortations on energy were actually quite frightening. When it said that when he was sitting under this Bodhi tree on the night of his enlightenment, he was very, very determined. I mean, already he had, tried various methods, self-mortification and various meditation practices, concentration meditation, and then he thought he was ready for it. So he sat under the Bodhi tree and put his cross his legs and said, let my blood dry up, and let my skin shrivel away. I will not rise from this seat until I am enlightened. Well, fortunately he was before his blood dried up. Otherwise he wouldn't have the Buddhist teachings today. But this was a result of the accumulation of many skillful qualities over many years. They say, traditionally you talk about the 500 previous lives of the Buddha, cultivating all these skillful qualities, generosity and patience and truthfulness, and the 10 paramitas. But also in his last life, I mean, he tried these various ways. The extreme of self-mortification, no, that's not the middle way. It's too far right. And then it was sensory indulgence. No, that's too far left. So I got to find the middle way somewhere. And then he realized, I would say, he realized that he was ready for it. He'd found the right balance, you see. But you have to it should come out of our own, our own attunement with our own energies and our own states of mind. Rather than coming from idealism and ambition and desire for enlightenment. It's good to have desire for it, but be realistic about it. Tonight, or maybe tomorrow night. There was one story I mentioned about one of the monks in our tradition. He went to spent some time in a strict meditation monastery. They call it literally just sitting in a room. Khao Hong, they call it in Thai. Just sitting in a room. So they bring you the food, and you do nothing else except just sit and walk all the time, day and night. And you only encourage to sleep only 4 hours a night, you see. So it's a little bit intensive meditation, say. And there's two monks went there. One of them he's already a very good meditator. When I met him at Wat Nanachat, he could sit there for hours. So when he went to this place, he had very good concentration already. So one night he sat all night, and he had a very powerful experience. So the other monk was a bit envious, I guess, and thought, if he can do that, I can do that. So he thought, okay, tonight I'm going to sit all night. So he made this determination in front of the Buddha image, and the determination helps you to give you a bit extra little boost, you see. So he sat in front of the Buddha and said, I will sit here all night until my blood dries up. I don't know exactly what he said, but so anyway, he was all ready for it. So he sat cross-legged there. He sat there in front of the Buddha, and after about 15 minutes, for half an hour, after an hour, he was just burning with pain. Oh my God, I just can't do it. So he gave up after 1 hour. And then he had to apologize to the Buddha for being so so egotistical to think that he could. So when he apologized to the Buddha, and he really felt humbled by this experience, and he couldn't do it. And so then it was still early in the evening, so he thought, well, I'll just sit here for a little while. So he crossed his legs and sat there for 4 hours. Without any ambition, without any desire to do anything or get any results. He just sat there in relaxed posture. Okay, I'll just sit here and see what happens. For 4 hours. So beware. See how much you desire, and how much it's out of tune with how you really are. See? And many times that kind of ambition can make you more tense, and more uptight and more anxious and more, sort of negative background attitudes. So, but you just, if you sit with an attitude, okay, there's an hour, I have an hour of time now, and just sit and see what happens. The body's upright, so breathing to focus on, just see what happens. I'm observing the way things really are at this moment in body and mind. Not expecting anything special. If it happens, fine. If enlightenment comes along and knocks on my door, well, okay. I won't turn it away. But that relaxed attitude, I would say, is more in tune with your own energies. So you're less fighting with yourself then. So did I right effort? And so they covered enough because we're running out of time. So there's a few minutes for questions anyway.
Thank you very much for your insightful talk. I just want to know, actually, now, practice, how can one individuals develop the urgency in practice? Because I feel that actually when you run out of time, certain things become very clear to you, certain things become very important. Not this be too late. But that's the human nature. So just thinking, how can we develop that urgency?
Well, if there's some people, it just happens to them, they come across it usually by some kind of crisis or something. But there's also some reflections which can be useful too. I mean, like in our monastery, in the evening chanting, there's a certain number of these reflections we go through. Like, I'm the nature to age, I haven't gone beyond aging. I'm the nature to sicken, I haven't gone beyond sickness. And in a way, they're a little bit, you can say, in one sense, artificial. Maybe you don't feel sick, you don't feel old or something. But if you at least you bring up that as a direction for your mind to consider, to contemplate, and sometimes it may become clearer to you, because you have that as a direction for your inquiry. It's like feeding a skillful thought into the mind and then using it as a seed for further reflection. Okay? So even though you don't feel it at the time, but if you're just waiting for the feeling of sickness to come along, so you can really contemplate it, you might wait for a long time, or you might miss it completely and just go straight from life to death overnight. You see. So, but there's certain of these reflections which is trying to bring up into our consciousness, the kind of preciousness of the human life, the uncertainty of changing conditions, about old age, sickness, death, for example. We think, we just assume, we normally assume, oh, I'll just live forever, until suddenly one day you get a bit of a shock and, oh, no, I don't feel well today or something, or But these reflections are trying to broaden your perception of things, to give you a different perspective on it. Even though you're living in a reasonably comfortable situation, but beware, it can change any time, any moment. As I get older, I hear more and more about people, people's crisis, So then I went to the doctor and had my own checkup. You see. But I'll still get surprised maybe. Actually, I did get a surprise because I went there and checked my cholesterol level. It was okay, So okay. And then the doctor said, "Oh, what's that little mark on your nose there?" "What mark?" It's just my beauty mark. And then they got a bit worried about it. "Oh, that looks like it could be precancerous growth, And so my my blood pressure, my blood sugar, everything's perfect, And then they saw something different, which I wasn't even looking for. So, but we caught it in time. It's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. But it's if you really have some trust in the practice, then maybe you look around for situations which can, give you more energy. I mean, samvega. You said you translated as urgency, right? It's translation of samvega, right? And a sense of urgency. Yeah, but I mean, that implies that your sense of urgency generates more energy for the practice. You can say, focusing on the practice specifically, but more energy too for practice. So, and whatever, if you look at it in the context of, needing more time or energy for practice, and what will kind of goad you or support you into it, or encourage you that way. See? So maybe you have to, look for a situation that can provide that,
Yeah, Ajahn, thank you for your sharing. I've always had difficulty with my energy level. Since I was young, I always don't have enough energy, and I need more sleep than other people. And I also have a mind that's very thinking and very anxious. And since you talk a lot about knowing your own energy levels, so I just came back from a retreat, and I found that at the monastery, it's very different from my usual sleeping cycle, because we wake up a lot earlier, and even in the daytime when I try and take a rest because I'm feeling very tired, I cannot sleep very much. And I found that today when I came back home, I was so tired that I just slept almost the whole day. And I don't know how to reconcile this. I don't know how the monks can manage their energy level. Maybe Ajahn can shed some insight on this.
Well, when you live in a quiet forest monastery, there isn't so much to think about. I noticed myself, that there, being the abbot of a monastery in Switzerland, for example, there is some business I have to attend to, you see. So, and sometimes it gets sort of piles up, and there's lots of left brain activity, you see, which is quite exhausting. But then when I have time for a retreat, like in the wintertime, we take a 3-month winter retreat. And having that as a retreat time and not having to engage with so much administration, then there's less mental activity, and I notice I need less sleep. I mean, maybe you say you think a lot, maybe the brain uses lots of energy, you say more proportionally than the body. So if you spend a lot of time having to think, either thinking, or you mentioned anxiety, which is trying to not think or trying to undo these, or thinking about an emotional state or something, that's still burning up energy, see. So I mean, first of all, I would say when you're looking at your energy level, check out if it's physical or mental primarily. The body and mind are interrelated. So for some people, it may be, physical based more. For others, it is more mental based. So you recognize at least a general area where the source of it is. And then if it's in the mind, more mental based, then what aspect of that mental activity is so exhausting? For some people, it's more emotional. They have a lot of emotional stress, either a family situation or a work situation. For others, it is, having to think a lot. They have a job where they have to use their brain a lot or something. And then if you look at your priorities, and you can use your brain to get rich, or you can use your brain to get enlightened. So what's your priority? or half at this age. The middle way. Rich and enlightened. Well, probably the thing is we have a limited amount of energy, see? So it's important to kind of look what your priority is, where you're going to put that energy, see? When I was meditating in Thailand, I came all the way from Canada to go to Thailand to meditate, and I got there, and then well, my month is nearly up. Should I stay? Should I go? What should I do? And I thought, well, I came all this way to meditate, and to a Buddhist country, to a Buddhist monastery, and will this chance ever happen again? You know, so I put my energy into it, and it got to the point where it was on the verge of, if I don't go back now, I'm going to miss my university term, you see. And I thought, well, I think if I stay here and can know my mind better and experience much more peace of mind, even I go back to university, it's still going to be more useful for me and for the rest of the world. Letting loose this crazy brain on the world is not at a benefit. So I shifted my priorities. It was more important to stay in Thailand and meditate than go back to university. So I kept shifting, and after a while, I couldn't go back anymore because but it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just sort of, it was. I was in a situation where I had to get a visa every month. You see, so every month came up, I had to think, do I go or do I stay? And each time I looked at it, it was different. But half the time I was really inspired. My meditation was going really, really well. So I got to stay here. Just another few days, and I'm enlightened. And then the other half of the time, my meditation was not going very well. I was so depressed and so miserable. I thought, I better stay here and get happy again. Before I go back home. Otherwise, I go back home depressed. Is that what Buddhism does to you? So anyway, after 9 years in Thailand, then I went travel to the West. Then my 1 month became 9 years. The time flies when you're having fun, Or more, I think the Buddhist one would be, time flies when you're being more present in the present moment. I can't have hardly any memories. I had so many hours just sitting and watching my breath without any memories. I think 45 years, where did it go? It just kind of breezed away on my breath.
Yeah, I understand in the forest traditions, some of the monks live with malaria and they treat with their own traditional means, and they make do with just that kind of health standard. And at a higher level, for example, for yourself, you look after your cholesterol, you go for your medical checkup. At a more obsessive level, for example, some patients, they will go for health supplements on top of looking after their chronic illnesses. The question is, how much effort do we need to put into looking after our health to prolong life or practice, from the monastic to the common man?
Well, I guess I think you probably answered it. Not to become too obsessive about it. The middle way, moderation. I mean, there's a lot more knowledge and information around nowadays. About the proper diet and the exercise for the body and that. So, I mean, in a way, our lifestyle was supposed to be healthy. You see, we don't have supper in the evening. We don't overeat, And we go, if you follow the forest tradition, you go for alms round every day. You know, one of Ajahn Chah's rules was if you don't go an alms round, you don't eat that day unless you're sick. Yeah, so we can't sleep in too much. I mean, can't sleep in too long. And it dawns about 5 o'clock, 5:30 now, I guess. So, but usually we get up at 3 o'clock or something, which probably maybe isn't good for your health. Can you tell me that? I shouldn't get up at 3 o'clock. The doctor said I can take it to the abbot. The doctor said I shouldn't get up. But it's a matter of, you know, looking at your own, you know, how much time do you spend looking after your health? I mean, you have to be a bit sensible about it, not too obsessive about it. Yeah. And I personally, I noticed myself when I'm a lot more aware of my own physical condition now, with years of developing body awareness. And I would say that, I don't know, something like 80% of the time, the body is sick. The body's not perfectly comfortable, put it that way. But my observation is that most of the time it just changes by itself. It's self adjusting or self-healing most of the time. Generally, if some kind of uncomfortable condition lasts for more than 4 or 5 days, then I kind of think twice about it. You know, it's going to go through the basic, you know, what's happening. Is it your heart? Is it your, you know, blood? Is it your what you're eating, whatever, you know? But most of the time, the body readjusts itself without too much interference, without too much worry about it. When we were living in Northeast Thailand in the early days, it was in a very, very poor village. Northeast Thailand is very poor, and it was a very poor village, and the villagers were very generous, provide, you know, the best food for the monks, but it wasn't a lot. Yeah. And before that, I'd been traveling in India, and I had to study about nutrition. So I'm riding a bicycle, and you burn up a lot of calories on a bicycle in the heat of India. So I had to study a bit about it. So then when I came to Northeast Thailand, and in the morning we passed out the food into the bowl, and I looked in there, and there's no vitamin B, there's no vitamin C, there's no protein, there's no we're gonna die. But nobody died of malnutrition. Okay, we were a little bit on the lean side. and I was a little bit exhausted, you know, quite a bit of the time too, you know. In the early days, just sweeping leaves for half an hour, and I had to take a rest. But then when the diet became a little bit better, we didn't have much choice over the diet. As the place got more and more well-known, more people came, and the food conditions improved, and then I could sweep for an hour before I had to rest. And I noticed, oh, gee, even though, you know, we survived all right, the body adjusted to it. It's surprising how tolerant and how endurable, is that a word? Endurable the body is. You know, it can survive many difficult conditions, you see. But if you're used to a very comfortable situation, then your kind of level of discomfort maybe changes, you know. Yeah. But part of our way of life was to try and live simply, try and live a very simple condition, and so you have less things to worry about, less visits to the doctor and hospital, and just allow the body to look after itself. And you had a lot more time for, you know, the meditation practice, if you like, you know. So. And some of the teachers, like Ajahn Mun, the kind of grandfather of the forest tradition, he was several times, he was very, very badly, very, very seriously sick. And he was way out in the countryside, so it was a bit hard to get to the doctors. But he just said, oh, just leave me be. I'm gonna go into samadhi and heal myself. And just through the power of his meditation, you know, after 2 or 3 days of meditating, he got up, you know. It's like the story in the Buddha's time, there was what was his name? One of the Buddhist disciples, anyway. And that's one of the Bojjhanga Sutta chanting. The Buddhist told the monks to go and chant this, the 7 Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening, yes. To just do the chanting at his bedside. And they did the chanting, and he was so inspired by this chanting and by the remembering these factors of awakening that his illness just abated right there and then. He got up and walked away, went under the tree to meditate. So did I answer your question? Sort of, yeah. No, I could have kept it simple, but are you afraid you might lose your job? Or you always have enough patience? He's a doctor, you say. You might say, worry about your health more so I have more customers. No. I'm sure you have enough to do, huh?
Do we have one last question?
Nope, they just want to sit here all night.
Okay, if not, please join me in repeating sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
बुद्धं शरणं गच्छामि।
आवाज इंडिया टीवी प्रस्तुत धम्म चक्र प्रवर्तन दिन 2020 शुक्रवार दिनांक 23, शनिवार दिनांक 24 एवं रविवार दिनांक 25 अक्टूबर 2020 को प्रबुद्ध परिवार प्रबुद्ध भारत उद्घाटन समारोह। शुक्रवार दिनांक 23 अक्टूबर 2020 शाम 6:30 बजे। उद्घाटक डॉक्टर नितिन राउत, माननीय ऊर्जा मंत्री महाराष्ट्र। अध्यक्षता भदंत संघसेन, लेह लद्दाख। प्रमुख अतिथि डॉक्टर हर्षदीप कामले, IAS। सम्यक संवाद दिनांक 23, 24 और 25 अक्टूबर। धम्म चक्र प्रवर्तन से हमारी उन्नति कैसे हुई, जनरेशन नेक्स्ट के प्रगति की रणनीति कैसे होगी, प्रबुद्ध परिवार के निर्माण में महिलाओं की जिम्मेदारी, धम्म चक्र गतिमान करने में युवाओं की भूमिका, रोजगार स्वयं रोजगार क्षेत्र में कहां पहुंचे बुद्धिस्ट युवा, प्रबुद्ध भारत के निर्माण में लोकोत्तरा भिक्खु ट्रेनिंग सेंटर का महत्व, धम्म चक्र गतिमान करने में भिक्खु संघ की भूमिका, प्रॉब्लम ऑफ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन बेस्ड ऑन कास्ट एंड कलर, डॉक्टर अम्बेडकर ने बुद्ध धम्म का स्वीकार क्यों किया, प्रबुद्ध भारत के निर्माण में भिक्खु संघ तथा उपासकों का समन्वय, बुद्धिस्ट जीवन पद्धति से जीवन में क्या होता है लाभ। समापन समारोह रविवार दिनांक 25 अक्टूबर शाम 7 से 8 बजे। धम्म चक्र प्रवर्तन दिन समापन समारोह विशेष संवाद। सहभागी वक्तागण राजेंद्र पाल गौतम, समाज कल्याण मंत्री दिल्ली सरकार, भदंत विनय रखीता बैंगलोर, माननीय सुबचन राम कमिश्नर इनकम टैक्स। रात 8 बजे संगीतमय समारोह। सहभाग तमिलनाडु, लद्दाख, पंजाब, गुजरात, महाराष्ट्र के कलाकार। रात 9:30 पर धम्म चक्र प्रवर्तन दिन का अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महत्व। कनाडा, इंग्लैंड, अमेरिका, जापान, स्वीडन, ऑस्ट्रेलिया आदि देशों से मान्यवरों की सहभागिता। देखिए लाइव टेलीकास्ट ऑनलाइन gbcindia2020.in पर, facebook.com आवाज इंडिया टीवी चैनल, youtube.com आवाज इंडिया।